Hi, this is Stephen Bourne from the Rise Civic League. Stick around. We're by Town Hall. We were going to be in the courtroom, but Alex Hurley, he's going to tell you about the history of our government and why is that room that they have all those meetings called the courtroom. So, all right, what happened the last month? We had our town election. 27.7% of the people, of the 5,209 registered voters, I think we had 1,434 people show up. That's just over out of four people voted. So we can do much, much better. Think about it. If you voted, you look left, right. The people next to you probably didn't vote. We did have a recount. Don Calero was down by 7 to John Tuttle. After the recount, John Tuttle actually picked up 1 vote. So the new select boards, Rob Wright returning, Howard Catlett, John Tuttle, Susan Barton, and Scott McQuaid. There were 19 absentee ballots that didn't get counted. If you haven't figured it out, our mail doesn't get sorted in Rye anymore. So all the absentee ballots going out went to Rye, to Portsmouth, to Manchester, get sorted, and then had to come back. Even if you mailed it, to Rye, it went to Rye, to Portsmouth, to Manchester, and back again. So much more, I think, well, I don't know historically, but a bunch of votes didn't. We need to be aware of it, and it could be an issue for this year, for the September primary, and between that and the election. Bob McGrath finished his term. The last select board meeting, he was recognized by the department heads. Some of the key things he did is his personal projects. There's a great visitor site on the website. We've got consistent signs at all the beaches. He raised private money to do this, so that's good. And also, if you're in town hall, there's a whole bunch of sharp looking pictures. A lot of those were donated by Bob McGrath, so he was thanked for his 3 years of service. At the first meeting, there was a motion. Actually, a bunch of people in the public said, hey, start with a fresh slate, new tone, break with precedent, don't have Rob Wright be the chair. There was a motion to not have him do it, but it didn't get a second, so Rob Wright was elected chair. The select board has changed around how public comment to the last in March, but now they're only letting 5 people speak at the beginning of the meeting, and then anyone else, those same people and more can speak at the end of the meeting. And they're going to see how that goes, and then maybe put together a policy. That's how it's suggested from the municipal association, that you have a process policy to manage that. So we may see that in the future. Also at the select board, if you remember conservation, the last 3 years, the select board hadn't been taking the Conservation Commission's recommendations for appointments. They changed the process. Things had to be posted 30 days in advance. I missed it. Actually, all the appointed positions were posted February 9th. We should have been communicating that much last year. It started after the election, that 30-day window. That 30-day window is now over, and they did appoint people. And this time, used the exact opposite arguments to accept the recommendations from the Conservation Commission. The same arguments they said, this is why we have to change the process. So that was pointed out by a number of people. The Conservation meeting on March 12th was packed. The Conservation Commission has decided they're going to sail Goss Barn Farm to keep the swallows out of it. We learned that, the talk about it's a safety, that blah, blah, blah issues. All of that is not true, turns out. They wouldn't come out and say it explicitly at the meeting, but they want to save the barn for people, not the swallows. So the barn will be sealed. But they are working on information, or putting up some nests. There's information if you've got a barn, live by, want to build one, help out. People have contributed some information, and that's posted in a link there. Little on some development news. I think you remember we're across from Atlantic Grill, that parking lot. They were looking at putting like a farmer's stand market. They've said they're not going to do that for now. Planning board gave them back their escrow money. We're 15 Sagamore, that's where the barbecue food trucks were going to move to coffee shop is. That's changed owners. That development has expired, so anything else is going to have to come to the planning board again. So that was news. And then the last one, the Energy Committee informed the DPW. There's some of that the stuff that was in the gasoline fund, clean water fund, for energy, that if you trade in old polluting DPW equipment, they'll give you money for new ones. So we're actually handing in well, we haven't been awarded, but we're in the line to hopefully get it, handing in 2 of our older plow trucks, and they're going to give us a new plow truck. The only thing people are a little about is they're trying to, like, you got to destroy the old ones, which some people said, well, why can't you find other ones that are even worse than those and play it down the chain? But that's out of our thing. So, all right, you're done listening to me. Let's go find out some interesting history from Alex.
Good afternoon, everybody. Standing behind the town hall, we thought we were going to be inside in our illustrious meeting room, which in 1956 it was, but not anymore. But we can't get in because it's Sunday, and so we're going to stand outside. This is a very historic occasion. We are on the cusp of April 2026. And maybe you're not quite as excited as I am, but 300 years is a big deal. Now, this is not Rye 400. Remember, that was just settlement, first settlement in New Hampshire. Nothing to do with Rye. It was just what became Rye. But this is the parish of Rye. This is 300 years of being called Rye. And that means 300 years of town government. That means 300 years of a select board. Well, I've had a half century of Rye Select Board and wanted to just tell you a little bit more. There will be an article in Stroll that reflects some of what I'm saying today, a little bit more, and then a more detailed timeline in May. Because why shouldn't we recognize this? It's a good opportunity to look back, see where the successes were, where the lack of success was, what we can do. I mean, we can learn from history, believe it or not. Let's try. All right, so we got the parish. We originally started out with 7 select board members, and then not too long after that, it went down to 3, and now we're back up to 5 again, as you know, just from the past election. They also elected a town clerk. You can't have local government without a town clerk. I mean, that's really the heart and soul, because that's an employee, and they're going to stay on. And even though it's an elected position, I mean, sometimes you have people on there for a long time. And we had to have a moderator who's going to run the town meeting. So, Amy Thibodeau, Nina Parrott, and the 5 new select board members, they're the ones, this is the 300. In 1771, we did get a town treasurer because they realized very soon, okay, somebody's got to handle the money. But after that, it stayed the same. And we didn't really add anything to town government. Stuff got done like roads, bridges, care for the poor, chase moths, God knows what, certain kinds of animals, predators, and so forth. I mean, I don't really have access to any town reports before 1863. But looking at those town reports, it pretty much hadn't changed with the kinds of work that town government was doing. And you can just imagine what some of those things were, but particularly roads, bridges, and then collecting taxes and how is this money going to be dispersed, and then getting crews together to actually build these roads or maintain them, and the same with the bridges, etc. Okay, so that's bringing us forward now. We got a school board, a school superintendent. By the 1860s, we start to have narratives in the town report. Ditto, cemetery trustee starting in 1893 when we got the cemetery. But you have to wait until the 1900s before you finally can pick up a town report and there's actually sentences and paragraphs and not just statistics. Nonetheless, it's still very informative, and of course it's all online by town reports. Let's get to 1956. 1949 to 52, the town changed dramatically. Blake Rand, after 63 years being town clerk, died. Newell Martin, after a half century of being a selectman, died. Those 2 guys ran the town for the first half of the 20th century. So when they were gone, you can imagine, things changed. We got a planning board, a zoning board in 1952, along with our select board, and then all these other boards you can think of in the 60s, you know, with conservation, historic district, recreation, etc., and then other boards following in the next few decades. So obviously town government's getting a lot more complex. A key thing is 1968, because that's when we get the first time we have a building inspector. With one exception, we had one during the war for 1 year, and then they threw it out. The reason we did that in 68 is because he really updated the zoning ordinances. They had some in 52 when they created the planning board and zoning board, but they needed a lot more. And then they needed a building inspector to enforce that. So that's a big change. And that, by the way, was the year that the Rye Civic League was established. 1956, I want to do some research on this. The courtroom. Can you imagine the cases? 1956 to the 90s. Of course, it was all misdemeanors, and that took the pressure off the local district court who's dealing with felonies. It wasn't just traffic violations, all kinds of range of misdemeanors, but that gave this town a place to have a meeting room. And now it's time to find a better place. Thank you.